I did. The whole of it.
What's been your experience?
I want to figure out this microphone is extremely long. All right, let's go ahead and get started, folks. Good evening, all. Thank you all for coming. My name is William Fisher, and as your Director of Emergency Management, a significant portion of my responsibilities involves collecting information for overall situational awareness and facilitating multidisciplinary coordination. This has been my role with the Davis Square situation from the start. Tonight, I will be facilitating this community meeting with the assistance of our Deputy Director, Lauren Mahoney. Before we begin, I would like to review some community agreements we're asking everyone to follow. We will review these again in depth later in the meeting before we get to the question and answer session. So if you look back here behind me, we're looking at, we want to listen with empathy. Listen with empathy when we're interacting with each other. We're all better than that. We want to make sure that we are empathetic and kind to each other. We also want to make sure, there's a lot of things going on. People may have, the ability to hear with a room with a bunch of people in here, so we want to make sure that everyone can hear. So we want to make sure one person is speaking at a time. This is also online, and there's people in the other room that are listening. So we want to make sure there's only one speaker at a time. And we want to make sure that we reserve a large amount of time at the end of the presentation for your questions and answers, because that's really why we're here today. And so when we get to that portion, there's a lot of people here, which I'm very happy to see. But that means that we want to give everybody a chance to speak. So once you've had your chance to speak, then allow others to speak from that point on. And we want to ask that you agree that you can have two things that can be true at the same time. You can be concerned for your safety, as well as want to be compassionate for others. And we want to talk about that. We want to talk about your experiences, and work together, and answer some questions today. But understand that we're asking that you open your minds and think that you can do two things at the same time. And then finally, nobody here knows everything. Definitely not me. Nobody up here on the panel, and nobody considers for comment. So we want to, this meeting is about to give you a chance to express your opinions, to make your comments and ask your questions, but we're hoping that we'll gain some valuable information during this as we work together collaboratively to decide on how things are going to be handled moving forward. So with that, we'll move on to the agenda. We prepared an agenda of, with your questions and comments as the primary focus. Like I said before, the entire point of why we wanted to do this is to give you an opportunity to speak and ask questions. We will begin tonight with Mayor Ballantyne, who will provide a welcome introduction. This will be followed up by a review and a city response to some of the most frequently asked questions we receive regarding activities in Davis Square. This portion will involve high-level response from city staff, and in an effort for the question and answer portion to be as long as possible, we kindly request that you hold all your questions during that time. We'll present those frequently asked questions. The staff will give their responses to that and give some background information on a high level. But we want to make sure that we don't get into the question and answer session then. Please hold your questions until the next section, which will be the question and answer. And because of that, or with that, tonight we have representatives from the Mayor's Office, the Health and Human Services Office, the Police Department, Constituent Services Office, Communications and Community Engagement, the Library, and Emergency Management. These departments have prepared information ahead of this meeting to ensure that representatives are well prepared to respond tonight, provide relevant examples and data, and if necessary, will conduct further research and respond after the meeting. Finally, we'll proceed to the most important, and that's my opinion, longest portion of this meeting, the open question and answer session. This section of the meeting is allocated the most time because it is really what we're here for tonight. Listen to what you have to say and provide answers. So with that, I would like to get things started by introducing Mayor Katjana Ballantyne for an introduction.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. And I also want to acknowledge we have some elected officials in the room. I do see our state representative, Christine Barber, is here. And I will say, I can't see everybody else. So everybody else, raise your hand in terms of the local elected. And your Ward 6 City Councilor is here, Lance Davis. This room, I am certain, holds people with a wide range of perspectives on how we should be responding to homelessness, public space sharing, and public safety. So I want to start out by being very clear that each and every one of you has a right to your perspective, and that each of you have your experience, your own experiences, which matter. It is just as important that you are here tonight to hear updates and information from me and staff and how the city is responding as it is to hear from each other. We're a community here. Tonight we'll update you on what we've been doing, the best practices we deploy, the challenges we face, and the foundation we've laid moving forward. And as a community, we take the next steps, we will need to not only decide on policies and actions, but on who we are as a community. For that, you need to hear from each other as much as you need to hear from leadership and the staff on the ground. So I say thank you for being here tonight. I want to start by sharing our 3 guiding principles for this work. The city is following evidence-based tested practices. We use proven best approaches for supporting people experiencing homelessness, to best aid them in accessing shelter, housing, and services they need in order to regain stability and relieve impacts on public spaces. Everything we do is designed to help people out of the cycle of homelessness and to serve our full community. Number 2, we operate with the core of compassion for all our residents, but not for harmful behavior. Crime and violence is not tolerated. Somerville police proactively patrol and swiftly act to identify and arrest anyone responsible for violence or other infractions such as drug dealing, just as police do anywhere in our city. What we do not do, however, is criminalize homelessness itself. It doesn't work, and it's inhumane. The third principle is we are equally committed to residents who seek to safely and comfortably use our public spaces, and we are to supporting residents experiencing homelessness. We have poured resources into additional trash pickup and cleaning, needle pickup and collection, preventing human waste from with porta potty services, intensive police presence, humane belonging removal when tents and tarps appear, and more. And the work we do to help people shift from sleeping and living rough to stability ultimately aids all who use our public spaces. It's also important to do some brief table setting on the challenges we face. Homelessness is on the rise both nationally and in Massachusetts. In 2024, 56,000 people in the Commonwealth alone experienced homelessness. That's up from 33,000 5 years earlier in 2019. Cuts at the federal level and a weakening economy outlook are also unfortunately poised to drive more people out of their homes, leave fewer resources for regaining jobs, health, and housing. The national impact, nationally this impacts us, but so does what's happening right here in our area. This spring, for example, Cambridge had to close roughly a 58-bed overnight shelter as their federal funding ran out. As a result, our community saw an immediate influx in people without shelter seeking somewhere to sleep and live, and in our public spaces after that, including Davis. At the same time, some Somerville residents are filing a lawsuit or have filed a lawsuit to halt, well, it has now been halted, a planned move for, I think if you don't know, we have a shelter that's run by the Homeless Coalition. It's on Chapel Street. We've funded them. I've funded them through federal funding to expand that by 10 beds, about a block up the street and across the street. But that's been halted for a year while this lawsuit is pending. Moving would let them have 10 additional beds. This is the Somerville Homeless Coalition shelter. I note that that's close to the number we tend to see sleeping overnight in Davis Square lately. So the very local impacts us too. Since we last met about a year ago, last fall, we've significantly increased our presence and our efforts in the square. That includes increased supports to our nonprofit partner, the Homeless Coalition. I've added 3 staff as community health workers. Those are outreach workers that work for the city, and 90% of their time is out in the community connecting with people. We've added a social worker to our library, and improving, we also, I would say this will be our 4th winter. I opened the first ever overnight warming center in the winter for unhoused. We're going to do it again. That is located over in the former Cummings School, which is near City Hall, and that offers roughly 25 to 37 beds during the winter time, the colder months. We also have close to 800 housing units in the housing pipeline, including affordable housing units, which is critical because Housing First is the absolute best practice for addressing homelessness. These are all resources that lay a foundation for better addressing the root causes of this challenge in a lasting way. So far this year, we've undertaken with our community health workers nearly 400 individual outreach encounters. We've more than doubled our proactive police engagement. We've instituted daily cleaning of the squares and monitoring trash cans 3 times a day. And the Homeless Coalition in the last year has found 65 people permanent housing. So that's a little over 5 every month. Of course, there's obviously more to do, and there is more that we've done, so I won't list it all off right now. For now, we'd like to turn the questions you posed to us already, and then after that, we'll open it up to the general Q&A. Thank you.
Thank All right, so next we're going to move into the question and the frequently asked questions section, I should say. These are questions that we put together that were submitted ahead of this meeting. There was a lot of questions that were submitted ahead of this meeting, and we figured it would be the most efficient thing to do is bring the ones that are most common together and prepare answers ahead of time and kind of review those at a high level before we go into the open question and answer session. So I will be reading the question, and then some of the staff will be responding behind me. So, where do we go? Next slide. So first one is, how is the city using best practices to support the unhoused? And for this, I'm going to go to Health and Human Services Director, Carol.
Hello, thanks for having me. Karen Carroll, Director of Health and Human Services. So how the city is using best practices to support unhoused. I want to first say we partner heavily with our lead agency in this arena, the Somerville Homeless Coalition, as they are the experts. We follow a housing first approach, which basically means that we view housing as a basic human right. We aim to rapidly rehouse people as quickly as possible in low barrier shelter and housing. We offer wraparound services, support, healthcare, and job search, as well as housing. Some samples of evidence-based strategies that we do use in the city are conducting outreach and building trust with our outreach workers. Again, in partnership with SHC and other outreach agencies, as well as our community health workers. We use trauma-informed approaches and harm reduction, which means we use practical strategies to reduce negative consequences for individuals. We also focus on access to housing, as the mayor said. In addition to the 65 individuals housed by SHC since January, there have been 150 to 200 families rapidly rehoused by SHC as well through their services. So we connect rapidly any referrals we have to their housing outreach officers as well. We connect to supportive services, and that can be anything from enrolling people in mass health so they can begin to address their healthcare needs, SNAP, food benefits, or a whole range of other basic needs and supportive services that individuals need. Our Housing Stability Office and Housing Office in the city work hard to divert folks from homelessness in the first place by expanding affordable housing and permanent supportive housing options as well. And that would go for our partners at SHC, assist with that as well. And then finally, the engagement of stakeholders. By that, I mean we have a weekly multidisciplinary huddle with city staff and a few partner agencies to quickly understand and address issues as they arise in real time. And we also have the work of the Davis Square Public Safety Committee that happened throughout last year, and we thank some of you in the audience who worked with us on that. I'm going to step aside, we'll take questions at the end, and we'll let someone go to the next question.
For the next question, we're looking at how are you balancing safety in public spaces with compassionate service? Yeah, sorry about that. And for this one, we're going to go to Deputy Milner.
A little taller. Good evening, everyone. As Bill has said, my name is Jim Donovan. I see many familiar faces in the crowd today. I was the captain of patrol for a number of years in Teal Square. You'd often see me walking Davis Square. I just wanted to recognize as well Captain Shumeane is in the back of the room tonight. He was my replacement. He's the captain in charge of patrol operations, which is the men and women you see in uniform every day. And he's also operating on Teal Square locally, spent some time in Davis Square. Karen had mentioned it before I start that. The chief was here earlier. He apologizes. There's an appointments meeting tonight, and he had to be there for certain promotions that are getting done within the police department. But he regrets not being here tonight. He recognizes your concerns for Davis Square as well as we all do. In recognition of that, Chief Benford, beginning the summertime, started the Davis Square Working Group. I know many members are here tonight. Thank you for your service. As a result of that Davis Square Working Group, we initiated more proactive patrols. We dedicated more proactive patrols. We had a lot of patrols last summer, and we increased those patrols. We had over 2,500 patrols in 3.5 months. It's significant. We had committed to 12 proactive patrols per day. We were at 24 today when I looked at the numbers. What are those proactive patrols? They are direct patrols, they are park walk and talks, and they are business and citizen contacts. What are each of those? A direct patrol, when an officer comes to a Davis Square, stops, gets out there, gets our car, he walks around, interacts with the public. Park walk and talk is a more dedicated direct patrol. The officer gets out of their vehicle and spends 20 to 30 minutes in the community in Davis Square, walking the square. As far as business contacts, that can be anything from getting a coffee, talking to a business owner, talking to a resident, or walking through the square. Again, we had 2,500, over 2,500 of those contacts in 3.5 months. As compared to last year, I have my glasses on so I get the numbers right. As compared to last year, we had 100% increase in direct patrols. We had a 325% increase in park walk and talks. Now, if you think of the dedicated time an officer puts in on park walk and talk, 20 to 30 minutes, and multiply that times, get the number, significant amount of time spent in Davis Square. As far as business and citizen contacts, we saw a 462% increase in business and citizen contacts. That's what we've done as a police department to increase our presence in Davis Square. We also work with the Homeless Coalition, hand by hand with Hannah and Mike Libby every day. They know the residents of Davis Square more than anyone. We work with them, express our concerns with them, and they communicate with us every day as to their concerns of things that are going on in Davis Square. We also work hand in hand with Health and Human Services and their community outreach workers. Oh, absolutely. The mayor had asked me to point out, we do track, we do have weekly reports for the activity in Davis Square, and we will say that our calls, what we call calls for service. And those calls for service are usually non-violent calls for service. The top two are either unwanted or a check condition. Someone sees someone that concerns them, they call the police department, we go up and check on them. Someone sees, has someone in their business or in their lobby, they don't want them there, we come out, we talk to the person, see if they need services, and we move them along. Those calls for service are lower this summer than they were last summer. We're going to take questions at the end. I promise you, as I do all community meetings, and Sean said that as well, I will stay as long as anyone wants to stay to answer questions tonight.
All right, so for the next question, they were asking, what is being done about trash and needles in the community? And for this, we're going to have Constituent Services Director Craig.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Craig, and I'm the Director of Constituent Services for the City of Somerville. So far, we've started talking about some very large systemic issues, but I want to address some more of the ground level day-to-day concerns that many of you have brought up. As Director of Constituent Services, I oversee the city's 311 program, and we typically...
Speak slower and more clearly.
Absolutely. Thank you. As the Director of Constituent Services, I oversee the city's 311 program. And we typically receive roughly 10,000 requests from the community every month. We're able to do that by working with more than 20 different departments and divisions around the city, including HHS and the police department, but also departments like the Department of Public Works and Inspection Services and many others. When it comes to the DPW, the Department of Public Works goes out into Davis Square to assess the area each morning, and they also empty the trash cans at least 3 times a day, Monday through Saturday. In response to neighborhood feedback, DPW is also working with a new vendor to make sure that the porta potties are being cleaned every day, 7 days a week. They are also responding to a very large number of individual 311 requests that come in for other related causes. When it comes to inspectional services, we work extensively with ISD as well as the police department when folks report needles, sharps, syringes, so that they can be reported and removed as efficiently as possible. Somerville was also the first city in the nation to roll out a dual sharp disposal container, as you can see up here in the photo, where the top drawer is for syringes and sharps, with the bottom drawer for containers and other related items as well. And before I turn it over, I just want to remind everyone that you can report any of these issues, 311, anytime.
The next question. Why don't you clear belongings or encampments? For this, we're going to go to the mayor's office, chief of staff, Spencer.
Okay, everyone. Excuse me. My name is Nikki Spencer, Chief of Staff Katjana Ballantyne. I use she, her pronouns. Before I dive into this topic, I just want to acknowledge it's really sensitive. We hear, for folks here in this room who live or work or play or eat in the square, we've heard feedback around any concerns around belongings or anything associated with an encampment, concern around safety or the condition of the square. We also know for folks here who are unhoused or have been unhoused or have lived with housing insecurity. When we've talked to folks living that experience, they told us that belongings are a lifeline. So we know that there's a lot of experience on this topic in this room and a lot of valid concerns from everyone involved. Our goal, as we will probably say a few more times tonight, is a balanced approach that uses best practices. So when we say a sweep, what I mean by that is when a city or a property owner has belongings for unhoused folks and just scoop them up basically, and so remove them. Sweeps are typically, unless there's very careful planning, they can cause a lot of harm. And counterintuitively, perhaps, if the goal is to remove belongings for the long term, it can prolong homelessness, and those belongings can come right back. So they are not necessarily an effective strategy. So when I say it's harmful, when folks lose their belongings in a sweep, they can lose things that they need to stay safe. And that could include things to keep warm. It could include medications, really anything that they need to stay safe and still live in the square. When I say that sweeps can prolong homelessness, folks can lose important documentation in sweeps. And so let's say that they need certain forms of ID to apply for services or for housing. If they lose that documentation, they may lose months in terms of having to go back and then apply again, get that documentation, get that started over again. It can also impact trust with service providers. If folks feel like they've been moved along, they may also physically be displaced and lose their connection with service providers as well. So the folks on our teams are community health workers, service providers like the Somerville Homeless Coalition, may lose access to unhoused individuals and that partnership of working together to get folks into housing. Sometimes when sweeps happen and folks are moved along, people can end up in even more precarious places, and that could be precarious for unhoused individuals or for anybody else who happens to be in that space. So all of this combined can actually make it harder to get housing and really prolong the process of providing someone with an alternative, another place to have those belongings. There are some very important exceptions, however. If there's anything, any belongings or an encampment that poses some type of public health or safety threat, that needs to be removed right away. And so this could take the form of needles or sharps in a public place. We will go and pick those up. If an encampment or if belongings are blocking an exit or egress, and our fire department or inspection services department says this is unsafe, we will need to remove those. If a location poses a particular safety concern, so in the last few weeks, when belongings showed up in a spot in a playground for children, or when belongings showed up next to heavy machinery, that's not a safe place for an unhoused individual in particular, we will work quickly to remove those. Ideally, we have time to work with our community health centers, to work with the Homeless Coalition, any other service providers who might have a relationship with those individuals. It goes better when we can talk to folks and prepare them and to give them some alternatives. We don't always have that luxury if it's a safety issue. And so what we try to do in those circumstances is store those belongings and try to get them back to the person who needs them. As many folks here are familiar, we are a small city. We don't have a ton of storage space in our city buildings, but we do our best to accommodate that. In addition, following that, we absolutely follow up with our community health workers and our nonprofit providers to try to reach out to those folks to make sure that they're still getting support, even if they cannot have those belongings in that space out of safety concerns. So that being said, we spent the entire summer reviewing our protocols and trying to create newer ones. It's still ongoing when it comes to belongings. We have had a relatively simple process to date, but we're seeing increasingly complicated or new scenarios that we have to grapple with as a city. And so as you've heard, there are many departments across the city, many city partners that we work with on these issues. And so this is an ongoing process to improve these protocols and make sure that we have clear coordination and communication across all partners. So again, this is a work in progress. This is something that I know a lot of people in this room are passionate about. We absolutely hear you. We're being as nimble and flexible as possible as we adapt to new conditions. Thank you.
So the next question is, how do you deal with public drug use and drug dealing? For that, we're going to get Chief Donovan again.
While I was standing over there, I did some rudimentary math, and our park, walk, and talks equate to over 200 hours dedicated conservatively to Davis Square in the last 3.5 months. That was just our park, walk, and talks. That's what the reference to the previous slide. As far as drug dealing in Davis Square, we don't tolerate drug dealing. Drug investigations are lengthy, intricate. We have had narcotics officers in Davis Square doing surveillance, watching some drug activity, but we don't necessarily make arrests consistently right away on drug dealing. Like I said, I don't want to go into the tactics and the methods used by narcotics detectives, when we have had narcotics detectives in Davis Square working on drug dealing activity. We do not tolerate drug dealing. As far as drug use goes, I know many people have called saying, I saw them using drugs. I'm not doubting them. I'm not doubting their vision. But I've been a police officer for 25 years. I have never, private civil uniform, walked up on someone actually using drugs. I can probably say the same for Captain Shumeane and Sergeant Dukas in the back of the room. That being said, when we do get a call for drug use, we do respond. We interact with the person. We offer them services. We scan the area. We advise them of why we're there and what our expectations are in the community. You know, we're talking about not being able to arrest ourselves out of the situation. I will say, when we do make arrests for drug possession, which is rare, when we do make arrests for drug possession, it's been our experience that the courthouse doesn't have a lot of tolerance for it. Most times, by the time the officer's done with their report, the person's released without it. Many times, they're released and they're back in Davis Square, or where they were arrested in Davis Square or any place else in the city before the officer completed their report.
Well, it's the best we can in this situation.
So for the last questions of the section, the question is, where do we go from here and how can I help? For that, we're going to go to Mayor Ballantyne.
So I just want to recap some of the things that we talked about. What is our approach? We give people a place to go so they can be. That's why we opened a daytime engagement center. It's in the CVS building with our Somerville Homeless Coalition. That's why we have access to our libraries. That's during the daytime. At night, as I mentioned, we're looking to expand an additional 10 beds with our with the Somerville Homeless Coalition, our nonprofit partner, for a place to people to stay. We also opened a seasonal, winter during the cold night, overnight warming center for 25 to 35 people. The idea is give people a place to go so we can develop relationships and connect them to resources. So the relationships, at the daytime engagement center, they can get food. They can have access to the internet. They can develop relationships with the Homeless Coalition staff and start maybe working to place somebody or to get them a job, or specialized staff like mental health clinicians, addiction clinicians. At our library, again, a place to go to connect people to resources is with our social worker and our 3 community health workers who are in the community. So, a place to go, connected to resources. Yes, public space is for everyone, and we've shared, what we're trying to do. We clean 3 times a day. If you see something concerning or someone harming themselves, you call 911 or drug use. Everything else you can call 311. And now it's, community engagement. We need your feedback. That's why we're here. As we said, the chief has, and with Nikki, my chief of staff, have been meeting with a group of public safety task force in Davis Square to get feedback. Our economic development and our health and human services director, public safety, myself have met with the merchants. So, we invite you in to share your thoughts, ideas in that too. And we have certainly bantered about the idea of starting a task force or community sessions for the general public, besides those, small business groups that have started and the group that is working on public safety. Okay, so we're going to start the open Q&A.
All right, so now we've come to the portion of your turn to, for question and answer portion. Lauren and Lauren, can you raise your hand? You're supposed to be in the back. She'll be in the back of the room. We'll be going back and forth. So we're going to make our way. I'm going to start in this corner. She's going to start in that far corner. She's going to move this way. I'm going to move this way. And we're going to meet in the middle, hopefully. So we hopefully can be fair in how we're getting to people. But before we get started, I did want to remind you that we have the community agreements we'd like to adhere to. We want to be empathetic, one speaker at a time. If you please try not to speak until you have the microphone. We have people listening online. We might have people that can't hear as well. So we want to be respectful to that. So once you have the microphone, go ahead and talk from there, and everyone will hear you. If you've ever already had a chance to speak, then we ask you to give everyone else a chance first, and then hopefully we can agree that we can be compassionate and worry about your safety at the same time. I know I will. And no one knows everything, and we hope to hear perspectives tonight the best of our here. And with that, if we don't give to you for some reason, on the next slide, there is an email. It's em@somervillemA.gov. We hope to get to everyone tonight. If we don't get to everyone, you can email that email and somebody, the appropriate staff member, will reply to you with an answer from there. So with that, I'm going to start in this corner. I'm going to start in that far corner. If you just raise your hand, we'll come up to you. And we'll answer the mic. Okay. front. Over here.
I'm Eva. I live over in Spring Hill. I work at the Material Aid Advocacy Program over in St. Rich. So you guys mentioned the dual kiosk for sharks. It seems clear that there's only one of those kiosks. Where is that kiosk? Are there plans to install more shark containers? When and where? And what other specific harm reduction supports do you have for folks who live on the street or use drugs to be escaping well? Like syringe exchange programs in Boston and Cambridge. And what are your specific plans for implementing those? I know that there's like the safe consumption site in the works kind of thing, but that's been in the planning stages for a couple of years. And so yeah, the kiosks, harm reduction supports.
Thank you very much, Eva, for the question. There is one dual kiosk. It's a pilot. It's the first in the nation. It was a prototype designed by staff here in Somerville. It's located in Seven Hills Park. It kind of looks like a mailbox from the back, a black mailbox. It's on the sidewalk. The front is painted. We have explored different wraps and we are getting input from the community on that as well. The top is for single, the bottom is for needle boxes, and we have plans to install at least one more, and the exact location is not yet determined. And then depending on how the pilot goes and the volume of usage, which so far has been very high, we're thrilled about that, we will look to use OPM funds to do additional boxes as needed. So this is very much a pilot, and we're reviewing the data as it comes in since April. In terms of harm reduction services, there is a lot, and so I don't want to take all the time. But several things were mentioned already through the supports of our library, social work team, the police, SHC. We also have an SSP or a syringe exchange program through Fenway Health, and they come through Somerville twice a week. They provide free clean needles and take the old ones as well, or advise people on how and where to dispose of them. And again, I have been asked, doesn't that encourage more use? In fact, studies show it does not, and it reduces litter as well as improves health outcomes. Again, it's about those touch points, so those folks have relationships, and we find that people who are accessing syringe support and harm reduction services are far more likely to get into treatment and yes, and we have the core unit, which is based in the Somerville Police Department. They are a partner as well, who can go and provide, again, assistance. There's a lot of, we all have our little bit different niche, and our core team of social workers will work with folks that have been involved with police or the justice system, and also post-recovery and people that may have had an overdose. So we have a range of players, and that's part of why we have a weekly huddle to kind of see what the needs are and where gaps are. I'll stop for now. If there's time, we can talk more about that. But thank you for the question.
Hi, Whitney. I live in City of the Square area. You spoke a lot about drug use and about homelessness, but not really about behavioral health or mental health. What are you doing to address people who are possibly, this is just not working. Possibly address those concerns.
Thank you, Whitney, for the question. I think I heard the whole thing you're asking about behavioral health services as well as mental health services. Again, without spending a lot of time, I'll try to highlight some of the same partners that I have mentioned. Also, our warming center operator, we have found ways to incorporate some behavioral health and mental health supports into that program. So, as I know, the Day Engagement Center has, now our libraries, and our community health workers are trained in some basic first aid mental health, de-escalation techniques, again, for employees. So we have a lot of these services woven through. One of our first goals for the community health worker is to encourage people and help people to get onto mass to get enrolled in mass. Is to get people enrolled in mass health so that they can access, and then we can start getting them set up with services and make referrals. So that is a big part of what our team does, and I'm sure at SHC they do. CORE, we're all finding those connections, but the first step is often to get people enrolled in mass health so they can access those healthcare benefits and get regular treatment and help that they need.
Hi, thank you so much for talking to all of us tonight. My name is Valerie. I live, in Davis, but on the bike path. And this is a question for you. I appreciate all the hours that you all are spending in Davis. I'm wondering if that includes the bike path, and how many of those hours are like overnight hours? Because I find that in the daytime I kind of feel okay, but at night, in my community, I'm just wondering how much time overnight hours are you spending patrolling and talking with people.
Help me to grab batteries for you.
I find this easier. That's a great question, Valerie. Admittedly, we do focus most on days, but we have committed tonight. I know my overnight officers, we call it the last stop, they are out there patrolling. They're required to use park walkie talks, system contacts, indirect patrols as well. I can reference to Captain Sheehan, he'll tell you that we look at the numbers every single Monday to see what each car, time, and day they're doing it, and to ensure that they are doing it. So you may have the last half, the overnight officers in cars 5, 6, and 7, only doing 1 or 2 in Davis Square in the overnight, but they are doing as per what required. We said we committed to 12 a day, and we're at 24. Could we do better? We can always do better. We can stretch on the bike path a little more. We have had our focus mostly on Davis Square proper, but we do have gone on the bike path towards Cambridge as far as Cameron Ave on occasion. But I will note that, and I'll pass that along.
Okay. My name's Monica, I live just outside the square. You mentioned a lawsuit that is blocking 10 shelter beds from coming online. I'm interested to, 1, learn more, and 2, understand what concerned citizens might be able to do to unblock those beds. Sounds like they're pretty necessary, and possibly maybe do more.
So thank you very much for the question, because I'll look to the attorney in the room, because it's in litigation right now, and I'm the we can't speak further in detail about it or share more information. I don't know, Councilor Davis, can you add anything?
I certainly am not serving as an attorney in this case.
Yes.
I do know from the city solicitor that the case was argued, and it's now with the judge waiting for the decision.
Waiting for what?
A decision.
Is there nothing the community at large can do to weigh in on this in some fashion?
I understand this case is with the judge.
For folks in the room or in the back room that could not hear Councilor Davis, this is a case before a judge, and we can't really comment further at this time.
So, I'm from Visa Creek, I'm the store manager. I want to comment for today. I know that the police is probably doing a better job, but I don't think we are getting less calls because of that. Is because we as the business, we don't call anymore. Or maybe we get tired of calling.
Before your hands are tied by the mayor, you can't do your jobs correct. Worse and worse and worse in Davis Square. It's a wonderful place, everyone. It's not.
We
hear this conversation.
I wanted to mention that before, since the beginning, we added a partner in our business, a really nice partner. Really corrected that the year after, but once we start having the home problem, we made it corrected the year after. This year we don't have it anymore, just a few neighbors outside. Maybe next year we won't have neighbors anymore outside. And what I'm going to do because of our business, we're losing business. And I hear people talking here about compassion and empathy. But where is that compassion and empathy for the business audience? Some kids and parents are with the babies and kids, and they even have to see people unfortunate, speaking to our faces, getting physical to us, or even getting like zombies and getting high in front of kids. I don't think it's fair for families and kids.
So I just want to start out. I would like to hear a specific question. How, hands are tied. What I said, and we have added a lot of resources in the last 3 years, giving people a place to go. We opened a daytime engagement center in the CVS building under the care of the Somerville Homeless Coalition. We have the library open. We added 3 community health workers. We added social workers. And as the deputy chief just said, we have more than doubled the patrols in the area. So the question is, I think the deputy chief gave the answer is, do you sweep everybody away? So is that the answer? You've asked us for evidence-based, what are the best practices? Is sweeping people and just moving them doesn't solve the problem. They come back, okay? Because this is where their community is, their friends are. They come back. There was sweeps. Well, I will just say it. So I'm happy to have the discussion with you on the how, but we have tried to, and we have implemented things that are best practices. Give people a place to go, then be able to connect them to resources. Oh, I was going to say, if you arrest people for being homeless, we can't arrest them for being homeless. We can arrest them for crimes they commit and or selling drugs and so forth. But as the deputy chief said, they can come right back by the time the paperwork is done. So we're trying to, again, give people a place to go, and that also includes housing, connect them to resources. So there's a pathway and relationships to get them to housing, and in the last year, we, with our nonprofit partner, we've been able to house 65.
And I'd like to say, I understand we've done from sometimes it seems like, nothing's getting accomplished. I can't say, as of today, my way here today, we arrested 2 people in 7 Hill Park. I was consistently arrested. We've made 14 arrests so far since June 1st, and minimum, and that's up to count arrests made by the MTA. So there are circumstances where we do arrest people. This person had a warrant today, and the other person his conduct just wasn't conducive to the public life, and he was arrested as well. That person did say to me, as he was being put into the transport vehicle, "You'll see me in a few hours." A lot of times he's telling the truth. To that point, I did want to point out that myself and the chief are meeting with the first justice in Somerville District Court and the chief probation officer this Friday to discuss a number of things facing someone. One of them is homeless shelter.
Hi. Hello. Okay. I wanted to follow up on the question that was asked about the dispute between the shelter and the community in the city. And I realize you can't be specific about what's going on in the case, but I'm wondering whether the city is able to access mediation to try to help this.
Tilt the microphone like this.
Whether the city is able to access mediation services to help resolve the dispute, given that a rumor has it that if either side loses, and of course the decision will be one way or the other, the side that loses will appeal, so this dispute will go on, possibly to the Supreme Judicial Court if it's about the Dover Amendment. So I'm wondering if there's a way to encourage and facilitate mediation to try to help the parties work together to a win-win solution, given in fact that the community and the shelter were collaborative, supportive prior to the dispute about relocation.
Thank you for the question, Fred. It's with the judge right now and with the parties, but it's well noted.
Hey there, my name's Jonah. I live between Davis and Teal Square. I just want to say, I think this sort of piecemeal approach that we've been hearing here about, well, you know, there's sharks, we used to have sharks containers, well, there's human waste, we used to have a porta potty, et cetera, really misses the point, which is that we're seeing our square, which should be this cool, welcoming, fun place, turn into something that's seedy and disgusting and filthy and chaotic. That is happening because the city has allowed us to become a magnet for homeless drug users through lax law enforcement and an overly permissive attitude. And when I say lax law enforcement, I don't mean that as a knock on the police. I mean that as a knock on the mandate that the police have given to the city. I think that there are absolutely levers that the city could be pulling, that law enforcement could be pulling to enforce the law in Davis Square. And make this a place that, you know, you want to be someone who breaks a social contract, who contributes nothing to the community, and degrades the community, it's not a place for you to be, and you'll recognize that. If you're getting, you know, law enforcement talking to you about drug abuse, law enforcement talking about littering, law enforcement talking about disorderly conduct. Just way over here tonight, as I was walking through Davis Square, there's a gentleman who I think is known to many of us who lives in the tents that you've allowed to exist outside of JP Litz, standing on the barricade, walking back and forth, screaming at everyone in the square, standing in a pile of trash. That's not, what you're talking about doing here is not generating the results that you say it is. So I think the tone of this meeting has been completely toned out and self-congratulatory. That you've done, and the rest of us just have to be resigned to seeing our square continue to degrade into a disgusting mess, which is not fair to your law-abiding citizens and people who contribute to the community here. So I want to understand, is my read correct? Are you planning on doing anything different, or are you just here to tell us what you've done, which is obviously not working?
Thank you for the question. As far as, I necessarily can't answer the question because that's more geared towards a collaborative response. But I can say from the police perspective, I have never been told not to enforce the law. I know some people refer to a board order that was passed a number of years ago, but as a commander of the patrol division operations unit in the police department, I've never been instructed not to enforce the law.
Well, why don't you?
Is there a question?
Drug deals every day in Davis.
And I said, we have our premium narcotics, and we have our premium. Can I speak? I get your frustration. I understand wholeheartedly your frustration. I was just in Davis Square. Again, I assisted with the arrest of 2 individuals. Didn't expect that to happen. It did. Your frustration is well founded, and I'm not discounting that. But as far as the drug dealing that's going on, we have a 3-man narcotics unit. They are set up in Davis Square. They do work Friday, Saturday nights. They work Tuesday through Friday. They are down there trying to make drug cases.
Folks, we have an entire room, so it's hard to hear here, and as someone with hearing loss, it's always a challenge. And we have another room that cannot hear unless somebody's talking into a mic. So please help us make this accessible to everybody by making sure that you raise your hand, say your piece, and we will respond via mic as well, and ideally one at a time. Thank you.
The section of the bike path that's between Davis Square and Cameron Avenue has a number of benches. And over the past year, I've noticed that more and more of those benches are just occupied by people kind of sitting around, loitering, littering, doing drugs, what have you. I was wondering if it would be helpful to actually remove the benches. I've never seen them being used by anybody else, you know, that.
Folks, for some of these, if it's a comment, or a question, we'll certainly do our best to answer, but also we will leave space for other folks to make comments as well.
Hi, my name is Tina. I live right across the street. I work nights, and on September 4th at 1:48 a.m., I got out of my Uber and I walked across the street to my front steps, where I was confronted by 2 drug users that were coming out of the courtyard by the library. They scared the hell out of me. They wanted to get into my apartment with me. I never got into my building so fast in my life, and to be honest with you, I'm still scared. So what can we do for people like me? A 135-pound woman alone at 1:48 in the morning, doing nothing but coming home from work.
I appreciate the question, and I do feel, I have to move this because it's over. I do, feel bad with your situation and what happened to you. I always say, I understand everyone's level of fear is different. I walked in Davis Square tonight. I'm 6'4", 230-ish pounds some days. I've been a police officer for 25 years and I had a firearm. So when I walk through Davis Square, I don't have that necessary level of fear everyone else does. So I completely understand everyone's individual level of fear, and that should not happen. I know that we do have patrols set up for the library, behind the library, and our officers are back there. Right now, we are considering increasing our presence in Davis Square, and we can expand more outside the neighborhood. But we are looking for more from our partners. We're working with our partners in situations like that. But in situations like that, we obviously call the police. Obviously, I always say there's always that question of, when do I call the police? Do I call the non-emergency line? Do I not call the police? I always say, here in the back of the neck. If you say, maybe I should call 911, you should call 911. That's why we're there. An officer will be there less than 2 minutes.
Joyce, I'm Joyce McKenna. I live at Kingston Street, where my house looks out on Burbank Street, right at the 2 benches at Burbank Street. So this is kind of a similar question. About a year ago, we got a meeting. I asked that the MBTA, can we ask the MBTA to move the benches at the daycare, turn them around, and take out the shrubbery. And it's been a whole year, and it's something that doesn't cost money. I know it's T property, I don't want to hear that. We can talk to them. And if all that land is T property, was the T asked about those benches that are out there on Ninth Street? Did they get permission? Did you get permission to put those there? Nobody asked us if we wanted the benches. And I asked a year ago to temporarily take out those benches. Those folks can't open their windows at night. The people sit there and smoke and drink
and do drugs and go to the bathroom right there. It stinks, ask any of the cops. It's disgusting. Could you please do it for us? Not for them. We do enough for them. Do something for us. Take out the fucking bushes, excuse me.
Sanctuary, please.
Sorry. Take out the benches. Turn the benches around at the daycare and take out the bushes. And then, now, get rid of that stuff on top of the T that covers the benches where they shoot up outside the daycare door. And then let me tell you something. I talked to 2 groups of people this week at the benches at the daycare. The first morning at 7, I flipped out. I lost it. And you all know how compassionate I am to be where I come from. Most of you. So I lost it, and I called these people horrible names. Horrible. I told them they were disgusting for doing what they do when they do it. And they just threw me off, told me to go away, swore at me. The next day I went back with a different kind of an attitude, and they thought I was being racial. And I said, this has nothing to do with the color. It's everything to do with what you're doing and where you are doing it. And I got to know these people. These people knew my son in Central Square, which is where he died of fentanyl 2 years ago in the wild. He had a room. He wasn't on the street. These people were with some very sick ladies, very, very sick. They needed something immediately. And I explained to them where my anger comes from. It had nothing to do with who you are, right? It has to do with your actions and where you're doing it. In between 2 daycares, could you please do something for us and open that area up and stop them from shooting up outside the daycare? That's all we're asking. 2 simple actions that don't cost money and don't hurt anybody. Please, can you talk to the T about getting rid of all that stuff? All that overhang over those benches, they just cleaned them out the other day. They came and did a clean out. It looked great. 24 hours, shithole again. So, sorry. That's all we're asking is for some kind of action. And those are 2 simple actions that can help the people who live on that end of the square. That's all we're asking is for some kind of action. Thank you.
Do we have a response to that comment, though, before we move on to the next question?
So first of all, Joyce, thank you very much. I know that given your personal story and everything you shared, you come just from a place of empathy. I know frustration is high. I also know that as evidenced by the T taking action a few weeks ago, and things coming right back, it is more complicated and it is harder than simply removing something or moving things away. And so I understand that request, and thank you. We are in touch with the T and have been around different things throughout the square, either through the transit police or through other means. So thank you for the suggestion, and thank you also for sharing your story.
I'm told that this mic is a distance. All right, let's try this now.
Hi, my name is Ron. My name is Ron Newman. I live on Day Street at Washington Square. I feel like the best way to make sure that unwanted things aren't happening in our parks and squares is to fill the parks and squares more consistently with wanted activities. So I would like to see us have a program where we have more music, more concerts, more films, more martial arts classes, more exercise classes, everything that we want to have in our parks. Schedule it frequently enough that the people who are doing things that we don't want to have done in those parks don't stay there because they're driven away by the things we do want to have happen in our parks.
Our economic development in our Arts Council are working on just that with recommendations from the small businesses and the merchant. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kent. I live on Elliott Street. I remember from reading a personal account that one of the biggest concerns that they have is their whatever collection of personal belongings they have. And I wonder if there are any practices in our broader community or nationally about providing a safe storage place or lockers or something that would allow the unhoused to reduce their stress level, be a little bit more mobile, a little bit more willing to go into warming centers instead of needing to load everything they have into a shopping cart and try to get 15 blocks across town or something like that. Obviously, in my perfect world, those lockers wouldn't be in Davis Square, but out of convention, I would like to see that they might exist somewhere for our unhoused population.
Thank you for the question. It's an excellent suggestion, one that we've been exploring. And as we've been coming up with sort of revising our plans protocols, we're thinking about what to do as a city. We have been looking at other cities, what they've implemented. Some of them are huge cities with a lot of resources. Some of them are closer to our size. We're going to have to be creative no matter what. I want to give kudos to the Homeless Coalition. They do have some storage on their facility in the engagement center. The city is looking at what we can do. We currently will store belongings if they're displaced, as we discussed earlier. We have limited storage for that. And there are best practices about how to do it, access for it, making sure that if there's anything in there that, for instance, is perishable, that we're keeping an eye on it, right? There are a lot of ins and outs. And so that is a practice that we're looking at, and it's an excellent idea that we will continue to look at.
Hi, my name is Shumeane, and I own Benoit Real Estate in Davis Square. A detective came in about a month ago, and someone evidently got stabbed and killed in front of my office. I've had someone urinate in front of my child where I had to turn his head away. It's gotten worse and worse under this administration. You talk a lot, but yet you're not effective. Talk is cheap. You can say all this stuff, everything, but I'm not seeing it happen. I'm friends with a lot of police. I've done a lot of business with police. They say the mayor ties their hands. They can't do much. Okay, I support police. I love police. I respect police. I'm a Section 8 landlord. I'm compassionate with people with low income. But I can tell you that Davis Square should have cameras. It should go into lockdown at night. Some sort of lockdown at night. Right now you have people sleeping in there. You don't see everything I see. People are playing with themselves. They're urinating. They're doing things they shouldn't be doing. See tons of drug deals going on, so whatever's going on with that, it's not effective. Police should be able to frisk these people. They should be allowed to do their jobs and be highly effective and supported. Right now, police are not being supported the way they're not getting support the community. They can't do their jobs effectively. You can say all this stuff, but deep down, this administration is not supporting the police. We need stronger leadership moving forward. I know this is for the new mayor, whoever's going to get elected. You really got to support the police. Let them do their jobs, be highly effective. Right now, this is pathetic. It's terrible. Leadership's terrible.
So thank you for your opinion. The facts are incorrect. The opinion, your ideas are your own, and you will have a new mayor. They're both here. You can ask them what their new plans are for next year. Councilor Wilson, what would you like to say?
I don't want to make this a campaign thing. I'm happy to talk to you all anytime.
Okay, so there's no, Councilor Burnley, new ideas.
I think I have new ideas.
Louder.
Also, I know this is a campaign thing because we're in a church. But I will say that there is something I found in last year law called the Municipal Industrial Financing Authority, which I don't think the city is using enough of. That's something where we can actually help fund some of these shelters, help people off the streets more quickly. But happy to get into the details with you all in the back.
So, we're looking to expand. We can't expand the current shelter. This is an entire community event we attend. We have to give people a place to go. Shelter, warming shelter, daytime engagement, the libraries, that is a first place to go. 800 housing units in the pipeline of construction right now, giving people a place to go. That is, the first step. And then connecting them to resources, developing the relationships. So I thank you for that. I don't know on the public safety side if you want to add anything to, well, maybe the rest of the team wants to hear what Shane said.
I don't want to repeat, as I said before, I've never been told by any administration, again, 25 years, the police department, not to enforce any criminal laws. We are frustrated. We are frustrated with the court system. We are frustrated with the system itself outside of the city. We do take action. There are, it is frustrating for my office, it's frustrating for me when we do take action and we see the same people back out in Davis Square. And these are people that aren't, we are not punishing the homeless, we're not criminalizing the homeless. These are actions that deserve criminal response. Stabbings, assaults, reckless behavior, disorderly conduct, assaults and batteries. So we are enforcing the law. Like I said, we've had 14 arrests so far since June 1st. 2 of them were tonight. I know the MBTA made the arrest for that stabbing, and we assisted number 1, and they made other arrests as well. So there is criminal enforcement, but again, we are not criminalizing homelessness.
Hi, my name is Kristen. I live nearby, just on Highland Ave. Last winter, there were more than a dozen incidents in which homeless individuals were found sleeping inside my apartment building, in the stairwells, laundry rooms, and in the garage. Each time, police responded but said they could not make arrests for trespassing unless another crime had been committed or the person refused to leave. Could you explain the city's policy or reasoning for not enforcing trespassing laws through arrests in these cases, and whether there are plans to change the approach as part of addressing safety and homelessness?
Thank you for the question. I can't speak to what the officers told you. Trespassing is against the law, but they have to be put on notice. If a person is trespassing and we tell them to leave, they don't leave, we can't arrest them for trespass. If the person is there, we identify them, we tell them not to come back, they come back, we can't arrest them for trespass. We had this incident recently, a similar incident recently, up the street on Highland Ave, where there's that overpass next to Kamikaze. There's a parking area there. The business owners came to us and said, well, how can we address the trespassing? We told them, put signs up. Put clear signs, no trespassing. And that allows us to take action.
And just to clarify, there is no policy. It's based on law. So we're not stopping it. It's the law that takes in effect.
Just a brief follow-up on that. My understanding was that residences need to have signs that say no trespassing because all the doors are locked. So I don't understand. Do we need to put up no trespassing?
No, if the doors are locked and they force their way in, that's a completely different subject. But it's hard for us, impossible for us to determine how they entered the building unless we were there. So we have to assume at that point they were either let in or the door was left open.
So if we put no trespassing signs up and they're in there, even if we don't have proof that they were breaking and entering, would we then be able to arrest them?
They could be subject to arrest at that point, yes.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Paul Maloney. We own and operate with Boston Burger Company. We've been in the square for approximately 17 years. And I do agree with what you said when you said homeless is not a crime. It's not. The actions from some of the people that are out there is a different story. They are crimes. You say that the drug use, drug dealing, you see it with their dealing cases.
You're not always there on a daily basis. You're not there the amount of hours you're there. It's the truth. You can't. It's impossible. But when we do call, and this gentleman was correct, he said, we stop calling. And I instruct my supervisors, managers all the time, call. I don't think you call 5 times a day. Call. You can't get in trouble for calling, bottom line. And I want them to do that. Today, there was an instance where my manager walked out, there's a person getting ready to shoot up in the back of our building. The back of our building is a problem on Winter Street, not just the front. That's where they go, they hide, they go behind the dumpster that's there, that's comes from the building for residents. There's wheels, there's defecation, it's a toilet, it's what's come down to. I called, and somebody went out in the back there. And I told the gentleman to leave first. You know, please don't go back there, please leave. I'm going, look, my daughter's with me. I said, no, please, don't go back there, I'm gonna call the police. Go ahead. So I did. The police came down, nothing we can do. We didn't see it. And I know that's part of it. I know that's part of the law. We have to actually see some of the stuff that happens as well, which is another issue to a degree. But again, the needles are out there. I told my son, who's coming to work for me today, I said, please be careful going to the back. Watch your surroundings. Careful of the needles. Don't get out the back door before you look out the back door. Now that's it. I work there, and that's fine. But there are people also who live there. That's their home. You wouldn't, nobody up there would like to walk out their door or their back door of your house, to your residence, and see that as well, or have to deal with that as well. And that's just the reality of this, not being with me, it's the truth. Now, as far as the homeless, I feel sympathetic to them because they're down in the world. They're not, to say the least. They need a place to live. They need a place to go. It's not, I don't want to be on money all this time. I'm here to get us. But when you speak to them and they're yelling at you, when the gentleman over here was speaking, about the gentleman standing on top of the partition, they're yelling, his top is down today. Finally, there's a meeting today. That top's been out the last 2 weeks. And you telling me that people come to in there, they're supposed to be taking them down. 311 is supposed to be taking this thing down. Not taking his possessions, but the structure. It's not happening. The cleanup is not happening on a daily basis. I'm down there every day to see. Nobody's come in to talk to me. Talk to my staff. The community policing, I'm assuming that you guys cover the parts of urban, not exactly. Right? Because that's not happening. Nobody's coming. The patios, we pay for those patios. We charge us extra now for those patios. That comes out of our bottom line. But we can't use them because over the weekend had to come running in because there was an altercation out front. And that's a true statement, that's a true fact. I'm not making it up, I'm not exaggerating it, this is what's happening. A ranking officer did say those exact words of our hands are tied by the mayor's office. So you want to hear it, I'm sorry, but it's the truth. That was a ranking officer in the office. And that's what's going on. The officer saying there's nothing we can do, their hands are tied. I understand they're not arrested for being homeless, not a crime, but drug use, the drug possession. How many people have been arrested for drug possession in the city, being pulled over, stopped? Do they get arrested, or is it just they don't get arrested if they're in the Davis Square? You know, I'm sure there are drug possession cases. I'm sure that people get arrested, get caught with drugs. And just because the courts are going to let them right go doesn't mean you stop doing the job. The job is the job. Right? And that's everybody else. And if the courts don't like it, too bad. That's their job too. That's what you're all paying for here. That's what all our taxes go up. Your taxes go up. You don't work for free. You pay taxes, you're also self-employed. So that is part of it. So the courts don't get at you if you're arresting people for something. They're just going to let them go. Arrest them again. If they're committing a crime. Arrest them again if they commit a crime. Eventually, they're going to have to address it at some point. When you have that conversation with the first justice, maybe he needs to be reminded of that a little bit. And it's not just coming from you as a police officer. It's coming from the people that have to live it, see it, deal with it. You know, that's part of it. And then creating homes, beds, places for them to go, stay, sleep. That's also part of it. And that's not, and none of us here, I think, are ignorant to the fact that that has to happen. But at some point, it has to happen, and it has to happen a little bit quicker than it has been. This has been going on for a couple of years, not this summer. The people, the families are gone in David Square. David Square used to be elected. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Alright? This is what it is.
Question.
My question is, these are things that are happening. The answer from the community, the answer as to why the police officers haven't been to our businesses when you say that they're out there. The answer they're walking around, but they're not walking around as much as you think. Maybe we need to be able to do a little bit more. And that's my question and my comments.
I appreciate the question, and thank you. As you know me, I've been in business as a citizen, not necessarily in uniform. I will say, I will make them do better. I will ask them to do better, especially supervisors. I was driving by right next to Christie's, 7-Eleven, whatever it is now. This afternoon, 2 o'clock, when your manager was chasing those two people up. I was in plain clothes. I was in the police cars. I was heading home, so I did observe that. I slowed down to make sure that there wasn't anything nefarious happening. But I will say, and this is for everyone, business owners, citizens alike, call us. We base our distribution, we base everything on calls for service. So, it really bothers me to hear the apathy of not calling and not criticizing you. That bothers me. I grew up in West Somerville. I grew up in Ward 7. I frequented Davis Square as a child, for 20, 30 years until I moved out all the way to Benford. But I still frequent Davis Square. Wiseman Insurance is my insurance agency. I get my hair cut at Mario's. I spend most of my time in Davis Square when I'm, out doing my personal business. So to hear that, I take that to heart. I take that, I know you mean it, I take it as maybe an insult, but not. No, I know you don't, but I take it to heart. I take that to heart, and I want to get that. Especially our businesses in Davis Square, because that is the lifeblood. Why else go to Davis Square unless you're going to free to the business? So I appreciate that. I will communicate that out to my officers, stop in, and then please tell your managers, residents, call the police department. It may seem like we're not doing anything. Please call us.
So it's 7:30 now, we're going to do one more question.
We should go till 8.
Yeah. All in favor?
Okay, can you hear me? Hi, sorry, this is Crystal Huff, they them pronouns. I was talking with several folks in the square before this meeting and over the past few weeks. Several of them use wheelchairs, and I don't think we have any shelter in Somerville that's accessible for folks who have wheelchairs. And so I was wondering, what are the nearest locations that are wheelchair accessible that we can point people to? As a second question, if we can, a bunch of them also asking what legal services they could access if they can't afford legal services. Several of them have said, I used to own a home and something happened, and I just want to know where they can be referred for legal help.
We'll say the window is fully accessible. The point that we make sure is fully accessible. The window warning sign, it's 100% accessible.
The current adult shelter in Somerville is not ADA accessible, and that's part of the reason for expanding and finding a new location. So the new proposed shelter will be ADA accessible. As Phil said, our winter warming shelter is accessible. In terms of area shelters where you can currently refer people, I would check with the SHC, with Somerville Homeless Coalition, or our community health workers. You can email them 3311. We'll have listings. Yeah.
And I would also say they can call our office for housing stability if there's a question, and they'd be able to direct in terms of help. I'm not exactly sure what the legal question is, but they are the good first point of contact to help.
Thank you. So this actually concludes the meeting.
Why don't we go to 8 o'clock, there's nobody after us, and if people waiting.
Folks, so we need to conclude the meeting. However, the folks that you see up here will be hanging out. We have other folks in the room from across the city. As you are figuring out, as you're leaving, if you want to come up and ask us questions, we'll absolutely come and talk to us. Okay?
If you don't feel like coming up and talking to us, You can also email the CN@Somerville, and somebody will respond to you. I do apologize. I really want to get this.
No one can see that, Steve.